Thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming. Can you hear me okay? Good? Good. Yeah, I see a few familiar faces. Some of you were probably at the gala last night. I'm hoping my voice holds me for this full duration of this talk. Apologies in advance if it doesn't. Yeah, I just want to thank Raindance quickly for allowing us to sponsor the event. This is our first time doing this, and it's been incredibly exciting. And thank you all for coming. And if you haven't heard about Celtx before, you'll find out a little bit today. Some of you might have already had, and you've referred to it as Celtics. We hear that a lot, but it's Celtx. Yeah, let's get into it. So we're doing a script breakdown masterclass. I'm not going to toot my own horn with the I'm not a master of breakdown, but I will get into it. Quickly, the agenda. So we're just going to do a quick intro on the history of Celtx, how we came to be, where we're based, as little as possible about myself. And then we're going to get into what is breakdown, why does it matter, why is it of a benefit, particularly to screenwriters. Like, I always like to judge the crowd here of who here is a screenwriter. Raise their hands. Anybody like a hyphenated writer, producer, writer, director, jack of all, there we go. See, so breakdown is going to be super beneficial to everyone, basically. Then we're going to talk a little bit about ye old way of doing breakdown, which if you want to do it, you can. Maybe if you're into typewriters, it's something you might want to do, is the old manual way of breakdown. But it's interesting to see done, and then we're going to pivot, and we're going to go into the Celtx way of doing breakdown, which you'll often see some commonalities between our competitors as well. There's definitely a standardized way of doing breakdown. And then we're going to get into a sample script and actually do some breakdown. And then we'll have some time for a Q&A on your seats there. There is a trial that you can try Celtx out for a month, our highest tier plan. So if you're curious about that, we would love for you to give it a try, and I'll have my email at the end. Would love to hear any feedback as well. So without further ado, let's get into it. So about Celtx, our mission is to improve storytelling and collaboration for creating film, video, and of late games. We've actually gotten into the interactive narrative writing space, which is really, really interesting. And also very interesting, a lot of screenwriters are making their foray into game writing. So maybe, next year or something at Raindance, there can be a session about that. Definitely would love to come back over to the UK, so I'm just plugging that right now. We were established in 1999, so we've been around the block for a while. If you've been a screenwriter for a while, you might remember that we had a desktop software. So we moved from a desktop app because we received a ton of feedback about collaboration was brutal when it came to having a desktop version. So we moved to the cloud in 2012. We were one of the first screenplay writing softwares to do that. And in that time, we have over 5 million users to date. We have 50,000 active creators per week, and there's about 70,000 new projects created per monthly. So that allows us to gain tons of insight, tons of feedback from writers all over the world. It's been translated into 55 languages. Yeah, it's a really great company to work for, and we're super amped to be here. Just to give you some reference, we're East Coast Canada, so that's that little island in the circle there, and all the rest of that's Canada. So we're actually closer to you guys. We're just, literally a hop across the pond than we are to the rest of Canada. Fun fact, we were a British colony until 1947, and the vote to become a part of Canada got through by a razor's edge. So we still really love our Tetley tea. There's pictures of the Queen on the wall. We definitely still have roots. And there's just a few pics of home. I've been to Cornwall. It's very reminiscent of somewhere like Cornwall. I don't know what the sheep picture is about, because that's not how we get to work and stuff. We do have cars. we do have a city. And about me. So I've been working with Celtx since 2015. Prior to that, I had a past life for several stressful years as a junior producer and content producer for a production company based out of St. John's. The thing with Newfoundland is we have a crazy good tax credit compared to the rest of Canada. And as indie film producers and creators, you know that those tax credits, you go after them as much as you possibly can. So we do get a lot of productions there. So that allowed me to it was a little bit of baptism by fire. The first show I worked on was a CBC series, which is the equivalent to the BBC in Canada, then a Netflix series. And then I delved into reality TV, which, spoiler alert, there are scripts for every episode of reality TV, including The Bachelor. So yeah, it was really great to do that. And then I kind of made my own foray, and I wrote and produced a short film. It was a passion project to me. Got by on a 30,000 Canadian budget, which probably equates to like 10 pounds here, because our dollar is just so bad compared to you guys. So that was a really great learning experience as well. And then Celtx kind of came into my life, and I've been there ever since, and I lead the product teams there. My guilty pleasure movie is any Irish comedy with like a hint of like sentimental values. So Waking the Divine is like my go-to. And my fave London restaurant is Flesh and Buns in Covent Garden. We just went there the other night, the Celtx crew. Highly recommend if you're new to London. So that's me. Let's get into script breakdown. So at Celtx, and generally in the industry, we kind of see production as 3 phases. So at Celtx, we refer to writing and story ideation, so the story development that you do, whether it's your index cards, mood boards, anything of that nature, all falls under story development, and then you get into script writing. As you move into pre-production, this is breakdown, this is budgeting, this is some scheduling, and then once you get into production, that is where the rubber is hitting the road, and you're doing your call sheets, you're there, you're on the fly, you're doing your end of days, your day out of days. So Celtx does actually cover every single aspect of that process. What we're most well known for is our screenplay writing editor. So what exactly is a script breakdown? Well, in the most general sense, it's a thorough analysis of a script that identifies and categorizes all elements needed to properly prepare for the production process. In plain terms, it's literally going line by line, scene by scene, page by page, and you are breaking down every single requirement that you will possibly need in every department for that. And the benefits of it, it's a crucial step in pre-production, as I think I already mentioned, but it helps isolate all the elements you need, and then you can further break them down by department. It gets your crew and your departmental keys ready, and it helps generate a shooting schedule, it helps generate your script sides, and it helps you get talking to your DP about your shot list. It's kind of like the very cornerstone and foundation of beginning to get into that pre-production process. And how can it help you as a screenwriter or a hyphenated individual writer, producer, director? From an indie perspective, breakdown can guide your writing to match the resources you possess, or you hope to possess, right? You know, it's a little bit of a way of like hacking your own writing when you can get into breakdown and get into your costs. If you're shopping your film around, you're looking for a producer, you've got to have a keen eye on, are you writing for your budget? And breakdown helps you do that. I remember in my short film, I had this scene that I was gonna need like a car mount, and it was really well written, but then what ended up happening was, it's okay, the car can be parked in a parking lot. He can just rest his head on the steering wheel, and it worked because that was the budget that we had. So I was able to kind of, from the producer perspective and AD perspective, go back and rework my script to match the resources that I had. I mean, hopefully you never end up in that position, and I hope you get a big envelope of money for script development and you never have to think about that. But you know, that's just the nature of it. And it really helps in early discussions with potential producers, that if you can talk to your script in a logistical way, given your breakdown, it really gets the conversation flowing with producers who you might potentially hire as the ever important role of the first AD, and your departmental keys, right? You should be able to send a script and a breakdown if you're trying to woo someone to be a departmental key or first AD. Small segue here, because I love talking about this. And I'm not gonna say it was all because of breakdown, because it definitely wasn't. But there's quite a few Raindance connections here. One of the best documentaries I've ever watched on how a production can go terribly awry, potentially due to lack of planning, but also like the cosmic joke that is the universe, is a documentary called Lost in La Mancha. And the connection here is Terry Gilliam. That way back in 1997, he had this passion project to create the legend of Don Quixote. And I believe up until, I think 2015 was his first shot at production, and everything went wrong. Luckily, he had a documentary crew with him that filmed the documentary Lost in La Mancha, and it is hands down one of the most hilarious, heartbreaking odysseys into filmmaking that you will ever watch. And I highly, highly recommend it. And the Raindance connection there, well, there's tons of them, is eventually, I believe in 2017, well, back in 2015, they ended up ceasing production. The film didn't get made. The Legend of Don Quixote, they just stopped it. And then in 2017, he brought it back to life again. And who should star in it but Sir Jonathan Pryce, who won the Icon Award last night, along with Adam Driver, and the same documentary crew that filmed Lost in La Mancha came back, and they shot another doc, which I believe in 2019 won an award at the Raindance for Best Doc. So whole series, highly recommend both documentaries. Really great foray into switching from the writing to the production process. More of a lesson of like not what to do than what to do, but highly, highly recommend. All right, so who conducts the script breakdown? In the early days, like I said, producers or hyphenated individuals, writer producers will often do a scaled down production. But once the pre-production stage begins, it is your first AD. That first AD is such a crucial, incredibly important role on so many levels, but particularly when it comes to breakdown. Like, that individual has to have an obsession with the details, and they assume the responsibility of the breakdown. So often they'll do the first version of it, and then as your departmental keys come on board, they become obsessed with their own version of breakdown. So say you've got your art department, and back home in Canada, that would include props, sets, set dressing, greenery. The art department will do a specific art department breakdown. But the end goal is having a clear shooting schedule that every department knows what they need. And on the topic of a first AD, I have a really close friend. His name is George Jeffrey. He is an awesome AD. He works out of Toronto. I feel like he AD'd all of Schitt's Creek. He works on feature films. Just all around super awesome, cool dude. So I asked him to give me a few words on what breakdown means to him as a first AD. So I'm gonna play that now.
Hey, how's it going? My name's George Jeffrey. I'm a first AD. I work in Canada. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about breakdowns that I do and how it relates to receiving a script, and just the importance of how those two come together and how we take what's on the page to the floor. A big one for me when I'm doing my breakdowns is receiving a production white script. That way we can lock scene numbers, which is super important, and move forward with asterisks that'll indicate changes on the different colors of the script. So that's a big one for us. Of course, each scene needs a breakdown, so it'll be a scene number followed by set description, and then either day or night, certainly a big part of it. In the set description, it'll indicate whether, hotel bedroom and or, country road, that kind of thing, interior, exterior. That'll have a bearing on how we set up the schedule. Script's broken down usually by 1/8 of a page, so formatting's big for us. Sometimes the headers and the footers and the margins get massaged to be bigger, to get more words on the page, and that can sometimes prove challenging, because by the end of a feature film script, there's just more than what the average formatting is asking for. Breaking it down by 1/8 of a page becomes 1/9 or 1/10. And you could end up with an extra half day of shooting as a result of that. So that can be tricky, so formatting is a big part of it for us. Also, in the formatting world, it would be all the information that's at the top, what color you're on in terms of revision, and a date that's associated with it is always good. And then you carry the scene that you're in. If it's more than one page, you carry the scene number, of course, from page to page.
Thank you, George. So yeah, he touched on a few crucial things there that I kind of wanted to get the perspective of an AD before digging into them and doing the demo. So one of those.
Hey, how's it going? My name's...
So yeah, he made a few key points here that I'm gonna get into. 1/8 of a page. Do folks deeply understand what that means when it comes to scheduling? Because it's a little bit of a mind screw to wrap your head around, but it comes from it originally being an ultra manual process. So I think most of us know the general rule of thumb when it comes to screen time is 1 page of a script equates to 1 minute. But in the scheduling world, completely different scenario. We schedule everything as 1/8. It seems to be the universal way of scheduling and getting your page counts for the day. So the manual versus automated way is literally, let me show you here, and then I'll jump back. So the manual way of doing a script breakdown would have been, you see this? Literally lining the script by eighths. That's where that comes from. And the logic to that is when you line your script by 1/8 and you start dividing your script, your scene lengths up by 1/8, that gives you a really good indicator of how much you can get in a day. So general rule of thumb for a feature is you can get anywhere from 3 to 5 pages a day in production. Again, depends on the complexity of the scene, the amount of setups, but that is generally a good rule of thumb. For example, really dialogue-heavy scenes with multiple players, like multiple characters, if it's 3 pages, you should just be aiming to do that 1 scene that day. Same goes for notoriously, like I said, driving stuff. Lucky if you get 2 pages that day. So it is a really good rule of thumb to follow everything by 1/8. The great thing about doing it automated in Celtx is you don't even have to think of fractions. Like, I hate fractions, and we do it for you. So you can just go ahead and do your breakdown, and then as you get into scheduling, as you get into your call sheets, we bring over and count those eighths for you. So at the end, it just spits out, look, this is how many scenes you're trying to do. This is going to add up to being 5 1/8 or 5 2/8 that day. Another thing he talked about is script visioning colors. Now, I did a bit of research on this because I know it can vary, but I go by the Writers Guild of America way. I don't know if in the UK the versioning control is different. My research tells me that it isn't, but George mentioned that at a bare minimum he needs a production white to begin. Optimally, you would get into, like, before your departmental keys get super involved, you get into like locking your script and get into revision mode. So that generally means as you move towards, having the most complete version of your script before shoot day, you work through these colors. So you start with version 1 is blue and you work all your way through to version 9. And what ends up happening is if you make changes throughout, so say you change a scene, and again in Celtx this is automated when you go into revision mode. If you change the dialogue in the scene, if you change a description of the scene, you'll start seeing these asterisks by that scene. And that is for your crew, that is for your keys, that is to like send out the bat signal, something's changed here from the last time you read that script. You should read it, you should ensure your breakdown is correct, you should ensure you're gonna have what you need for that scene. So again, it's something that Celtx does and automates, and that's the beauty of getting away from the paper wastage is you could just be sending versions of this out, exporting as PDFs, sending it out. I remember I worked in a production office at the production budget for paper usage was over 50 grand per season, and then we would break it down further because you actually end up printing on the legit color, so we would need like a salmon colored paper, which is significantly more money than white paper. So go digital, it's the best way you can possibly, especially as an indie filmmaker. Don't get tied up in all that paper wastage. No one wants that anyway, right? So let's talk about breakdown categories. Celtx takes it a little bit of a step further. We have a few extra categories there, but generally across the board in all systems, and whether you do it manually, you have very distinct breakdown categories. So I'm not going to get into all of them there, but they're up there on the screen. And then what you can do is you could further break it down that, okay, say, like I said, over in Canada, art department is sets, set dressing, greenery, props. Rule of thumb for a prop, if an actor touches it, it's a prop. So there's all these different categories that you're going to do as breakdown. And again, in the early days, you're doing it on your own. You should be identifying everything. But again, as your departmental keys become involved, you can worry a little less because you know they're just going to obsess over like maybe 3 to 5 of these things, and your other departments are going to obsess over the other ones, right? So that's the video I showed earlier. So worth mentioning here that these are all color categorized, and when I go into Celtx, you'll see that. And even when you do it manually as well, that you can see in this screen grab, they're using specific colors for specific categories. We really like color in film. We really, really like to color code everything. And you'll see that, like I said, when we go into Celtx. So let's go to... So let's begin breakdown. I chose an oldie but a goodie. I chose Good Will Hunting. We have a connection with Boston. Our company recently joined forces with a group of companies called Backlight, and they're based out of Boston. And I'm a sucker for any movies that are shot in the fall, like driving here and seeing all these trees and stuff. It's just like, to me, it's the golden hour season to shoot something in autumn. I chose this too because I mean, we know who Matt Damon are and Ben Affleck are now, but back then they were just finishing up school. I mean, given it was Harvard, but Matt Damon was finishing up school. And it originally had a production budget of $10 million, which is pretty modest by American standards. And it went on to gross $225 million. And it actually started in Matt Damon's final playwriting class at Harvard. It was only supposed to be a 1-act play. He turned it into a feature. He got Ben Affleck involved. He started shopping it around. And originally the screenplay was bought for $675,000 with the guarantee that if it ended up being produced, Affleck and Damon would end up making another $100,000. So in the beginning, not ginormous numbers, right? Like it was an indie, but it's interesting. They took the approach that Quentin Tarantino had done just a few years prior with Harvey Keitel, that they knew that they needed someone big attached to the film to secure more funding, and it ended up being Miramax who secured the funding. And it was good Robin Williams, R.I.P., love that man. But he was so genius that he negotiated a back-end deal that he ended up making so much more money than the rest of them when it eventually grossed $225 million. So yeah, that's the scene. I've chosen a scene from there. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to watch the scene, and then we're going to go into Celtx, and we're going to take a look at that specific scene, and we're going to do a little bit of breakdown, and then we're going to bring it through, and we're going to look at the scheduling.
They were fine. I mean, we was gonna close the deal, but then Billy insulted one of them, and the heavyset girl said that I had a receding hairline and I was a few pounds overweight, and I was like, "Go f yourself." I swallowed a bug.
You're an idiot.
What?
You're an idiot. I've been sitting over there for 45 minutes waiting for you to come and talk to me. But I'm tired now and I have to go home. And I couldn't sit there anymore waiting for you.
Well, I'm well.
Skylar.
Skylar.
Oh, and by the way, that guy over there, Michael Bolton clone. He wasn't singing with us, so to speak.
Yeah, no, I kind of got that impression.
Good. Okay, well, I've got to go. Gotta get up early and waste some more money on my overpriced education.
No, I didn't mean you.
That's all right. There's my number. So maybe we can go out for coffee sometime.
All right, yeah. Maybe we could just get together and eat a bunch of caramels.
What do you mean?
When you think about it, it's as arbitrary as drinking coffee.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Right then.
Yo! Hey! Look at some f***ing Barneys right now. Hey, wait, hold on. Skiing trip. I should have beat that old ass. Do you like apples?
Yeah.
Well, I got a number. How do you like them apples?
All right, so let's stop here. So we're going to pivot here now and go into Celtx. All right, so let's do this. All right, so this is our script editor. Nice thing about Celtx, I was just able to find, I couldn't find the shooting script actually to Good Will Hunting. So this is one of the original versions. And as I read through, I noticed that like quite a bit changed on the day, even in the scene that we're gonna talk about. So that's always interesting to see. I have a sneaking suspicion that maybe some of it had to do with resourcing issues. But you can import a script of any type into Celtx, and our system will read it, and it will parse out the scenes and your interiors and your scene headings. So that's what I've done here. And here's your scene nav. So we're gonna jump to, let's see here. Let's jump to scene, there we go. Scene 21, that's where we picked up in the film. So if you're gonna begin your breakdown, our breakdown is just simply right here. And we're gonna go into breakdown mode. Excuse the Wi-Fi here. Here we go. So now we're in breakdown mode. So as you can see, here's where the colors start coming into play, right? So right off the bat, this isn't the first scene in the bar, but if it were the first scene, whenever you have a new set or a new location, that's gonna be super duper for your art department to take a real hard analysis on what it is that they're gonna need. Is it gonna be a set? Are they really gonna shoot on location? And again, another totally different topic of scouting hugely comes into play here as well. So as you can see what I've done, I've put in the bow and arrow as a location, because that is a breakdown category. And then I've chosen at the bar, and I've made a production note here, because this is a white version that I have a note here of, we have not locked bar location, and this is all just hypothetical. If confirmed, day 2 will be held in parking lot outside, TBD. So again, as you're moving, this should be like a living, breathing document for you, right? That like you are making notes, you can upload photos, you can leave comments. And again, this is the great way about doing it digitally. I have a note here, Will sits with Morgan. I am making the assumption here from the art department that we're gonna need glassware, we're gonna need bears. That is a prop because they're touching it. So I'm marking it as a prop. Then I'm gonna go in, and another part of it is character. Again, when you get into your scheduling, you need to know what actors you have on the day. Another nice thing about Celtx is we automatically identify all your characters in the scenes, so you never have to manually go through and add your characters every time. Here's an interesting thing. This is where it changed from this script to the shooting script. So here they have them playing bar basketball, where the players shoot miniature balls at a small basket. In the background, occasionally we hear Chucky shouting, Larry. That didn't end up happening in the scene. Sometimes I wonder if maybe they could not source a basketball game, like the miniature ball machine. I don't know. But they ended up just going more simplistic and having Matt Damon's character just sit at the bar and have Minnie Driver's character, Skylar, just approach. And then we get into dialogue. Again, dialogue when you're doing breakdown isn't incredibly important because if there's an action, if there's a prop in it, that's gonna be noted outside the dialogue. So here is like the ultimate prop in that scene that carries over into the next scene. It's that folded piece of paper, right? That is clearly a prop. I did also notice that Minnie Driver had a sweater in her hand, and that's where things sometimes get murky for me because it's wardrobe, but it's in her hand. So like, is it a prop? How does that work? But just note it, make a note of it. You know, things can change on the day as well. Here's another really good example. In dialogue, we're pausing outside the dialogue and he's indicating to a clock on the wall. So that's gonna be set dressing. So we're gonna mark that as a category as well. So you kind of go through this. I did a couple scenes. I went to the scene outside, the next one, scene 22, the exterior of the bow and arrow. We see that prop note again. Also making note that he has to be able to pound on glass. That's going to be a set dressing thing of whatever location you end up at. Also important. Sometimes you'll say, for example, our boys. So you should be going ahead and noting there what characters those are if they're not specifically listed. So after you do all of that, what you end up with, you can move over here to the report section, and we're going to go down to the scenes that I worked on, that you start getting a list of everything that you need and what category it's in. So again, this can be exported at PDF. Once you get it all done, it's fully fleshed out. So what we're going to do here is then I'm going to show you, just 1 minute here, I'm going to go back to the script. We use a thing called catalog, which we find incredibly helpful. So what our catalog does, and ultimately what you would end up at the end of your breakdown, is you'd have a color-coded report of sorts that would break down all your props, like populated into one section, and then all your vehicle needs, everything that it's like, kind of like your library of everything that you need for the film. And again, that also helps with scheduling, because say you need the same vehicle in 5 different scenes. When you get into scheduling, it's like, okay, well, we can get this vehicle for one day. We should be shooting all of the scenes with that vehicle in that day or over a few days. So ultimately where you end up being is you get to create breakdown sheets. So in that video clip that I showed you of George, it did some cutaways there of your breakdown sheet. So where I've just done breakdown on just the scenes that I showed in the clip, ultimately you would have a multi-page document of your breakdown. This is the type of document that you end up with. And this is like a universal standard format. It's not specific to Celtx. You'll see it in many other systems. So you're going into your scene and then you're able to see quickly on the day. I've scheduled this to shoot, I guess today, October 27th. And you see all your needs for that particular scene. And there's your eighths. So we know that that is 1 6/8 of a page, and we've got another 1/8 of a page, and 1 2/8 of a page. So by the end of the day, end of shoot day 1, we got 3 7/8 of a page. That's pretty good. That's pretty fair, because one of these scenes has pretty heavy dialogue between Minnie Driver's character and Matt Damon's character. That again, your heavy dialogue scenes, multi over-the-shoulder camera, you should be accounting for many days. And also good to note that that scene, the scene with the slapping the notepad, the card on the glass, they probably had to shut down the street for that. So that's something to keep in mind too when you're scheduling your days, right? That there's going to be logistical needs and location needs. So this is your breakdown report. Then what ends up happening is you get to generate everything out of that then, right? Here's your strip board. So in Celtx, this is just simply like a drag and drop. So let's say hypothetically, I could get into the bow and arrow for one day. So I went through and I chose all the scenes that are shot in the bow and arrow, and I chose the interior scenes first, and we're gonna shoot day for night. So we'll black out all the windows, because then later in the day, we gotta do a set shift to exterior bow and arrow, and it needs to be night. So even when you're scheduling within your day, within your location, you should be thinking about the light, you should be talking to your DP, and all that stuff. So yeah, this is your strip board. So again, this is a huge to-do for your first AD after they complete the breakdown. I mean, really, you're investing a lot in your first AD. They have to love a schedule, love the logistics. Here you can put in the duration of how long you generally think it will take to shoot it, or you can just go into your standard minimal view. So that's kind of like your standard view that you would see universally across the board, regardless of what system you use. So then that turns into your calendar days that you just start plopping in when you're gonna shoot. What are your set shifts, your unit moves, And then that ultimately starts becoming all these auto-generated documents. And that's the real kicker with Celtx, is while you're working in the background doing your breakdown, we're creating these documents for you. So as you can see, and again, it's not a fully fleshed out, I've only scheduled 2 scenes, but we start auto-populating your call sheet. And you could have put all this info in ahead of time, and then you can distribute it via PDF, via email, you can export it to Google. And as you go back and you rework on your script, say you want to do a quick rewrite on the scene becomes longer, all you have to do is hit the sync button, and this all simultaneously updates. So again, we're taking that manual legwork out of the versioning and kind of going back and working on things. And as I mentioned, your breakdown sheet, that's kind of here. If you ever go back and futz with anything or change anything, you just hit this resync button, and you've got your breakdown sheet again. So let's see if we can get back to the catalog, because that's where I wanted to show you the color coding and kind of the, like I say, it's like your library. I don't know if you've ever worked on a film production that you've seen someone walking around with a big fat black binder. That's kind of the equivalent to that. It's that in digital form, that it is literally every asset that you will need for your production, and it comes out of breakdown. So there's not a whole pile here because I've just broken down 2 scenes, but you can imagine if you did a feature-length film, this would be extremely fleshed out, and you'd have a lot of assets in here. So again, this gets worked all the way down to a granular level. I've got the props that I've done here, Skylar's note. You can go in, you can write a description, you can leave comments. If it's, background information, for example, or actor information, and then you can even get into budgeting. So then when you start your budgeting process, you've already got some line items in there. So again, the color coding and everything, very crucial, kind of reminiscent to those cue cards that I showed you earlier if you were doing it manually. So yeah, that's essentially breakdown. You take your time with it, be really, really thorough, feel good about it, that you can sit down and not only talk about the concept of your script with potential producers and potential keys and ADs, but you logistically know your script too, right? And you know that you've written it for the resources that you have, and you've dug into that and you've done the homework on it. And that pretty much kind of clues it up. So, to recap, like I said, get your first AD involved as soon as possible. Keep an eye on your 1/8, as George mentioned, your versioning and your margins. That's why it's so important to use a tool like Celtx. You've got to pay attention to your margins, because like he said, you could end up with a feature film having an extra day of shooting if you futz with your margins at all and you make those pages longer. So always just stick to a screenwriting tool. Or you could just use Celtx to complete your script, your breakdown, and beyond. So that's it for me. As I mentioned, you can reach out to me anytime. We're gonna have some time for Q&A here. There's a QR code on the cards on your seats there. There's also one here for that trial. And again, like when I say reach out, chat with one of us here if you've got a project. We're always looking to document filmmakers and their process, always looking for feedback. And thanks for coming to the session. Any questions? Yeah.
Are we still using? Sorry. Why are we still using typewriters font for our scripts?
Why are we still using typewriter fonts? I feel like, well, for one, coming from a technical development background, because I work on the product teams at Celtx, I can say for one, when you get into writing in multiple languages, having one standardized font, it's called typeset for exporting and stuff. I know that if we started changing our fonts, and you're dealing with multiple languages and such, like it's just good to have one standard. The other more artistic opinion of mine is that Hollywood loves a little bit of nostalgia and romanticism. So I just feel like they stick with that font because it is the typewriter font. It's the original. Yeah. Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
That was very informative.
Thanks.
Thank you for that. Can you only use Celtx while you're online, or can it be used offline?
Good question. So it's cloud-based, but we do have an offline version strictly for writing. So right now, it's something we've recently developed. Right now, if you're going to do breakdown or any of the pre-production planning, you would have to be online for that. But you can go offline while you're writing as well, and you can use it on your mobile device. So like say you're on the tube or something and you lose your connection, you don't have to worry about it. You can keep writing, and it will come back up online.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. If you have a script that's already been produced by another software package, will you be able to import it into Celtic?
Yes, that's something that in the very, very early days, we were open source when we were desktop based. And we wanted to accept as many different formats as possible. So it isn't a two-way street. We import tons of different types, including Final Draft. But yes, you can bring it in and import it. Cool? We're good? All right, thank you so much, everybody, for coming. Really, really appreciate it. It's been great.